Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. It is Tuesday, February 21st, 2023, and welcome to Soul Strengthening Sessions. This is our first one of 2023, the year I call 7, and this year is amazing. We are going to be learning about going from the old to the new, the mind set. Okay, we're starting with the mind because the mind is where it all begins. The mind is part of the Trinity of the soul, which I teach on all the time, and that is the mind, which is our thoughts, the heart, which is our emotional realm, and our decision making, which is our will. Okay? So why is this important? Because everything we consume and we assimilate as part of who we are begins with how we think. Okay? So we're going to get into this, and we're going to get into specifically how do I go from an old thought pattern and process to new pattern process of thinking. And specifically, this trajectory of healing from negative thinking to positive thinking. Okay? So our mind is the gatekeeper of everything we consume. We consume through basically our entire being, our entire 5 senses that we commonly know and call. We consume through information that we receive. We consume through words that become a part of who we are. We consume through all of this collectively, which makes up our belief system. Okay, now what's important to remember is that we have a choice on what we receive. We don't always need to internalize what's coming at us. We have the free will to choose what I want to believe is truth for me. Okay, so I've shared before about the frequency. Okay, and I'm going to bring that into play here because this is a good analogy of understanding these 2 extremes of influence into our thought processing. Okay, so what is frequency? Frequency is basically the sound and everything connected to the sound of what I am receiving. Okay, in this instance, we are going to talk about the extremes of deception. Okay, the frequency of deception. That is to say that if I am tuned into anything that opposes truth, then I am listening to and have the potential to receive deception, which is going to impair how I think. The other extreme is truth. So I can tune into the frequency of truth, which is absolute, which is unwavering, which is constant, and which is certain. So I can choose to receive the frequency of truth, which is going to be the healing balm, actually, to my mental health. Okay? So how do we make this change from old to new. Now, we all have interference in our frequency. This is part of the life journey, okay? Because, as I've shared and taught before, our life is made up of the two pillars, which I've taught on before, that have impacted us and affected us, and have caused us to be in a broken state. Okay? And these are our life experiences in our childhood and adolescence. Okay? Which really makes up the sum of our life up to the point that we are now. But what I want to teach tonight is, number one, we have the power and we have the authority and we have the liberty to choose how we think. Now, there is subconscious thinking, which is rooted in these, I would say, a default pattern of thought based on the past and based on childhood. Okay? This is where you understand that sometimes what I think and what is coming out in my emotional realm, because they are connected, is something that is in the subconscious, okay? Which I'm going to get into in just a few. Then there's conscious thinking, which is right now. This is what I'm thinking. This is present time. And this is based on what I'm receiving at the moment and assimilating into self, and therefore multiplying. Okay? So when it comes to setting the mind, or having a mind set, okay, we've heard this a lot, what is your mind set on? Okay, because what your mind is set on is what you can expect to see the fruit of. Our mind is the home of our thoughts and our thought processing, which directly impacts our heart, the condition of our heart, and our emotional realm, which is how we feel, which directly impacts and affects choices and decisions that we make, which inevitably leads us to how we live our life. Okay? So, learning to recognize thought patterns that are unhealthy, that are toxic, that are dangerous to self and to others, is crucial. And this is understanding the mindset. Okay? So, what you first want to do is to take inventory of your thoughts and your thought life. Okay? We're going to do a little exercise that's going to help us gauge that. Okay? And because it's the year I call 7, we're going to do 7 of each. And this is for your own therapy, your own training, and your own self-evaluation, and mental health check. If you were to list 7 negative or unhealthy or toxic or dangerous thoughts that you've had, what would they be? Okay? And your other list is the opposite. You're going to list 7 healthy, encouraging, strong, brave, and life-giving thoughts. What would they be? And they could be anything. They could be about yourself, they could be about others, they could be about creation. It doesn't matter what it is. And what you want to do with these 2 lists is take inventory of what is coming out of your mind. Okay? Now, while you're writing that, I'm going to go back to this frequency that I mentioned earlier. The frequency of 2 extremes of thinking. We have, on the one hand, we have deception or compromised or counterfeit thought patterns. That is to say that this influence in my thinking is not truth. In fact, it is prohibiting me from receiving the truth into my thought process. Okay? So this is one extreme. And I call it deception because deception is the root of everything that is false. Okay? The other extreme is truth, which is absolute, it is constant, it is real, it is the root of identity. Because we can't fully embrace who we are without being truthful about who we are. Okay? Now, all of us are vacillating between the 2 at all times. But the goal is to go from the negative extreme to the healthy extreme. Okay? How do we... Got 2 questions here that we're going to answer in this time. How do we understand how our mind works? And number 2, how can I learn to set my mind on what is going to strengthen me and continue to assist me in my path to healing? Okay? So, the first step when it comes to understanding how the mind works. Now, I'm going to get into the mind just for a few. I've done this in other videos, but for the sake of it being a little bit richer and have more context to the rest of what we're talking about, I'm going to get into the mind. Okay? So, again, our mind is part of the trinity of the soul. The soul is part of the trinity of self. Okay? And what is trinity? It is 3 in 1. So, we are spirit, soul, and body. Okay? That is, we are a spiritual being, we possess a soul, and we live in a body. Now, within the soul, there are 3 parts. The mind, the mental space, the emotional space, and then the space that influences us to make decisions. So the mind, the emotions, which really come from our heart, and our will. So how we think directly impacts how we feel. How we feel directly impacts the decisions we make. And the decisions we make up our life. I keep saying that, but it bears repeating because it is a domino effect. So understanding, how does my mind work? Why do I think the way I think? And if there are changes I need to make, how do I do that? How do I set my mind from old to new? Okay? That's what we're going to get into right now. So, okay, the mind is a very complex part of who we are. There are different parts of the mind, okay? And there are different connections the mind has. This is how unique and intricate we have been created by God, okay? And I'm going to cover the surface level of it because there's so much that we could get into, okay? The mind has four parts and connections. There is the mental and spiritual connection of the mind. In other words, there is a spiritual element and part of the mind. This is a part of the mind that connects to our spiritual being, which is invisible. Then there's the mental, intellectual part of the mind and connection, which is how I reason things out, how I use my logic and my knowledge to put things together to make sense for me. Okay? Then there's the mental, emotional exchange and dynamic. That is, there is a part of the mind that is emotional and that also influences how I feel. So our mind feels as well. And it also is connected to our heart, which is a whole emotional realm of its own. Okay? And then, of course, there's the mental, physical part of the mind, which is literally our brain. And that is a whole world of wealth of knowledge when it comes to how our brains work, just physically speaking. And there's also the two, I'm just going to say the two right now, the two parts of the mind's function, which is in the conscious and in the subconscious, and actually three, the superconscious. Some would say the God conscious, which is basically the spiritual exchange. Subconscious is the part of thinking that, as I say, is almost autopilot because it is connected to the past a lot of the time. And then there's the conscious, which is active thinking, which is present, which is the exchange that's happening right now. Okay? So, let's do another little exercise. And I'd like you to ask yourself this question, or I should say answer this question for yourself. What are three areas that I struggle with. Okay, and they can be as general or as specific as you understand them. Understanding your brokenness is a very powerful position and posture to be in, because it is the first step to taking your power back from anything and anyone that has ever tried to steal it from you. Acknowledging my weakness is a strength, because once I acknowledge something, then I can accept it and embrace it, and then I can live with it. Okay? Now, I teach in my one-to-one sessions, and I teach this in general, that there is a process to healing. And it is just what I said. It is to acknowledge something is hurting or broken within you, accepting it. Okay? That is to possess it. Okay? To own it, to embrace it. And then there's this process of releasing it through processing it. And inevitably you release it to receive healing. Okay? So when it comes to our thought patterns, our mindset, and specifically in these areas that we struggle in, that you're listing right now, there is a root to where these struggles come from. Now, it is natural that whatever areas we struggle in affect and impact and influence how we view our life. And this changes when we learn how to process those struggles. So before we move forward, because I'm going to ask you to list 3 more things, of the 3 that you're listing for yourself, which one would you say is the most difficult struggle for you? Okay? And for the rest of this video, you're going to refer to that as I'm teaching, when it comes to going from my old way of thinking to my new way of thinking, and setting that as my frequency. Okay? So, one of the most difficult things for us to do, especially I would say in our day, because we are constantly bombarded with information at all times. Much of the time it's our own doing, out of habit. I would say specifically for those of us who have cell phones and have allowed them to become a part of our daily routine, to be on our phone, receiving information. A lot of times we don't realize that we're doing it because it's become habit right? And habits are formed out of repetition of doing something. It's become autopilot. I'm just doing this. It's a habit. I'm used to doing this. Okay? But what I like to remind us is that if we truly want to know how to renew our mind and think healthy and therefore feel healthy in our heart, and therefore choose healthy, therefore live healthy, we need to be honest with our struggles and how we are allowing the way I think to affect me. Okay? So here in this struggle that you have pointed out for yourself, do you know why this is a struggle for you? And if you don't, that's okay. But there will come a time that you will know why. And the why is your root to understanding the what, which is the struggle, whatever that is for you. Okay? This struggle that you have has impacted how you think. And how you think has impacted your struggle. Okay? So I'm going to show you this trinity, as I said, of the soul. Okay, I got my blue pen. It's thoughts, emotions, and decisions. It is the mind, the heart, the will, okay? So let's take a look here. Our thoughts impact how we feel. Okay? And how we feel impacts the decisions we make. And the decisions we make can continue the cycle of how we think. And so on. But at some point, we have to come into this pattern to break it, or I should say interrupt it, to fix it. Okay? And what I'm showing you is the starting point is to go to our thought life. How I'm thinking is how it begins. Okay? So when it comes to our struggle, how do I feel about that? How do I feel about my struggle? Do I feel shame? Do I feel relief? Do I feel helpless? Fill it in for yourself. And that emotional gauge will help you understand where I need to go. Okay? So for example, if in my struggle I feel helpless, that means that there is something in my thinking that tells me I have no one to help me with this. The question is that true? No, it's not. There's always help. That doesn't deny the validity of how you feel. It just brings light to the deception that's crept in to make you think, I don't have anyone to help me with this struggle. So we get to, why do I think I have no one to help me with this struggle? Is it because I've been betrayed and I don't feel I can trust people? Is it because I'm embarrassed and I don't want to tell people my struggle? So I don't even want to share it, which makes me know I can't be helped. You know, this is part of assessing how am I thinking about this? Okay? And then we get further into it. Why am I thinking this? Okay? So for example, in the same example I'm sharing, if I feel in my struggle, I don't have anybody to help me, and I come to this understanding that, well, I don't have anybody to help me because my trust has been broken so many times with people that I don't feel I can go to anybody to confide in them with the struggle. So therefore, I don't have anybody to help me. So the root is really not that I don't have anybody to help me and I'm helpless in my struggle. The root is actually why I feel that way, which is my thought of I can't trust anybody because I've been betrayed. Okay, so we're getting back to the root of it. Now, the truth is, yes, I've been betrayed, and yes, my trust has been broken with people, and yes, all of this is valid for how I feel and how I think about my struggle. But the truth and reality is that there is somebody who is trustworthy, who would not betray me, who would help me with my struggle. But I need to get to that point of believing that for myself. Okay? And this is where we understand going from the old mindset to the new way of thinking. The old way of thinking tells me I'm helpless and hopeless. The new mindset says, I've been hurt, but it doesn't always have to be that way for me. And when I'm ready, I can trust again. Okay? But how do we do this? And how do we get there? I'm going to share a few, I would say, building blocks to building up to this posture of learning how to do this. And this is a generalized understanding of the thought process. But it is the first foundational building block that I'm going to give you is so simple. but it is, and it will change your life. And it is one of the hardest things for us to do because we are accustomed to constantly go and constantly do and constantly receive information. Okay? But in fact, the only time, much of the time, that our brains and our minds get a break is when we sleep. So we need to learn this is like gold, what I'm going to give you. And it's gold for me. When I learned that this is how I get off the merry-go-round of negative thinking and toxic thought patterns and unhealthy mindset, and unlearn so that I can relearn, so that I can retrain my brain and my mind how to look at things, how to think things out. It begins with this: be still. Be still. In fact, it's necessary to be still, to be in control of what I'm receiving, actively receiving. Otherwise, I'm just on autopilot, and I'm letting everything else dictate my thoughts. Take that in for a minute. If I don't make this conscientious decision and take this life-changing posture to be still, I cannot get a hold of my thoughts. And just for a minute, I'm going to go into the space of anxiety, and I've taught on anxiety before, but specifically when it comes to racing thoughts. Many of us know what this is. It is horrible. It is a space where you literally cannot control what you're thinking. It's just all these thoughts coming at you, and you feel like you have nowhere to sit, nowhere to rest, because you're in a state of unrest mentally and emotionally most of the time. The way you get those thoughts to slow down and to calm down is to be still. Now, it doesn't happen automatically. In fact, you might have to practice this a lot before you can actually take every thought captive. That's a scripture in the Bible. And it is literally an active participation of, I'm taking what this thought is and I'm taking it captive because I need to assess it and make sure that it is something I want to assimilate into who I am and what I think and what I feel and what I do and who I am and what I be. Okay? I know that sounded funny, but literally, my being is contingent on everything prior to that. And it starts with how I think. Be still. To be still literally means I'm not doing. I'm letting rest wash over me. Now, again, remember this, I've shared this before, but some of us, this might come a little more natural because we're more chill and it's not weird to sit and meditate for a little bit or have some quiet. For others of us, it's completely foreign territory because we are and have the temperament to always be active and always be doing and always being with a lot of stuff going on. So it'll feel unnatural for some of you. But the process is the same. And when you are still is when you can sort through what's going through your mind. So you can assess, what am I thinking? When I do my one-on-one sessions, much of the time I do a 5-minute journal, or I give that as a therapeutical to write for 5 minutes what you're thinking. Okay, there's no, it's freelance, it's free form. It's whatever I'm thinking, I'm just writing it down for 5 minutes. I'm not even editing it, it's just coming out. Okay? And this is very therapeutical because it allows you the space to release those thoughts in a safe space, without letting them trickle into emotional realm. That's not to say you're not going to feel as you're writing, but to allow them to flow out so that you can look at them and assess them. It's a similar process when we're sitting still. I'm thinking still. And all these thoughts that are going through my head, it's taking time, and it'll take time for them to calm down. Okay? And that's going to vary for each of us. But that's the first step. Be still. So what do I do with all these thoughts once I'm still? Now what do I do? Because now I'm actually paying attention to what I'm thinking. And sometimes that can be overwhelming. The next thing I would do is to, just what I said, assess what I'm thinking. You could journal this, write it down. You could paint or do something creative to release it as it's coming to you. You can do creative movement to release it physically. But we also want to remember to do this, and that is to take the thoughts deliberately. Okay? To take them captive. In other words, just because a thought comes to me doesn't mean I have to, I keep saying this word, but it doesn't mean I have to assimilate it into my being and let it flow and create energy from me. Okay? A good example of this is tempting thoughts. You know, thoughts that come at you that you know are wrong. Just because I thought that doesn't mean I act on it. Okay? It's coming at me, but I get to choose. Am I going to receive this thought as part of my thought pattern and thinking? In other words, is this for me or is it not? Is this truth or is it not? Okay? And this is part of the sorting and decluttering of the mind. Taking the thoughts captive. Yes, this is mine. No, this is not. Yes, no. I have free will to choose what I want to think. Okay? And this is also going into unlearning, okay, and relearning. Okay? Going back to our struggle that we wrote down earlier, the 3. In my example, I had a faulty belief that I cannot be helped because I've been betrayed. Okay? I have to unlearn the general thought that I can't trust anybody because one person betrayed me or several people betrayed me. I have to renew my mind to the truth that not everyone will betray me, because that is truth. There are people who are trustworthy. There are people with integrity. There are people who are true. And yes, there are people who are not. And in my example, that is what I've encountered. I've actually encountered that. But I have to unlearn the thought, I can't trust anybody. How do I unlearn that? Well, number 1, I need to heal from that betrayal. I need to learn that I'm not alone. I'm not overlooked. I have rescue. And my heart will heal from what happened to me. And also, it'll take time for me to learn to trust people. So that's a process. But I unlearn it by acknowledging the truth of that thought. The truth frequency. I need to set it to that. And then we go into choice. I choose to believe this, and that becomes my belief system. Okay? So, in my example, I can't trust anybody. That choice to believe that is based on my brokenness, which again, going back to the subconscious mindset based on my trauma. But I can unlearn, even though that was my experience, that it's not always like that, and it won't always be that way. So I can then choose, when I'm healed and ready and going through that process of inner healing, I can choose. I trust to the degree that someone is trustworthy, which is actually, in my opinion, that is actually what I believe. I don't trust everybody. I trust people to the degree that they are trustworthy, because nobody's perfect. And we have, by the grace of God, discernment to know, how much can I trust this person? How much can I trust that person? It's my choice to extend that trust. It's your choice to extend that. And so this comes to this place of, again, taking the power back. I choose what I believe, what I think, which influences how I feel, which influences how I live by the choices I make. Okay? So, going from old thought patterns to new thought patterns, broken consciousness to whole consciousness, is the inner healing journey. It is a process. renewing the mind is a constant and proactive posture. I have to be the gatekeeper of my thought life. Otherwise, it's everything out here and everyone out here telling me what I think. And as simple as that sounds, I mean, it is profound. Like, I get to choose what I think and what I internalize and believe for myself and for others. But if I don't, then it is chosen for me, because I'm just assimilating whatever I'm being bombarded with. You can choose to turn the television off and not listen to what's coming out of that frequency. You can choose to ignore insults and not internalize them as part of your character. You can choose to believe the best of people in spite of what other people have told you about them. You know, and again, our choices come from what? From this domino effect and this circle of thoughts, emotions, decisions, thoughts, emotions, decisions. It's constant. So, the mind. It is the first point of contact in the soul and the inner being. And having a healthy mind has everything to do with knowing yourself well, knowing your brokenness so that you can heal, and knowing the desires and dreams you have that have been given to you by God Himself, so that you have vision to go from here to here. And I'm here to remind you and encourage you that you can do that. I'm a living testimony that you can go from the worst to the best. And it starts with the mind and how we think. I hope this has blessed you. I love y'all so much. Hope you're having a great year 7 so far. And I'll be back next time. Love y'all. Bye.